You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 242nd edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 787th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of February 2nd, 2022. I am your host, the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call, how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes a shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred last Saturday when the Indiana Hoosiers defeated the Maryland Terrapins to improve their record to 16-5 overall and 7-4 in the conference. The road win was valuable in many ways. One, it helps in the conference race. Two, it moved Indiana into a 7 seed range on a lot of brackets. And third, it was important to get a win leading into a week of preparation for league-leading Illinois, the game on Saturday. Most importantly, it's the way the Hoosiers won that was important. After an 8-0 deficit to start the game, Indiana was able to gain control, never looking back the rest of the way, and winning somewhat comfortably against a Maryland ball club that had won a couple of games recently, including against Illinois, even though it was without some of their key players. These types of wins have been missing from the program lately. Jared said it best after the Purdue win that, quote, "This allows the program to breathe," end quote. I believe this road win also allows the program to breathe. The consistency that we have all been looking for is closer and closer to being a reality, and that means good things for the Indiana Hoosier basketball program. Okay, let me introduce my esteemed co-host for tonight. Ryan is on his way to Bloomington, had a couple flights canceled because of the weather and is trying to find his way in, should be there probably tomorrow. Jared is prepping for his flight tomorrow to come into Bloomington. Hopefully the weather will allow that to happen. They may pop in sometime during tonight's show, but here with me now.
The best of you sports coaching, you know that we got 'em. When it comes to analytic trends, you know he can spot 'em. For first-class bracketology, if you want the top, you gotta go bottoms. If you want the top, you gotta go bottoms. If you want the top, you gotta go bottoms.
Andy, what is your bottoms line on the last week in Indiana basketball?
Well, I think it's been kind of odd to not have games to watch, but I think a really well-timed break for the team. If you especially got a few guys who've played a lot of minutes, you got some guys who inevitably are a little bit banged up. So sometimes it's a little bit like, I think the NFL, you don't want to get the week 4, week 5 bye. It doesn't really do you a lot of good. You want to try to get one in the middle, and so this one comes. Not quite exactly in the middle of the Big Ten season, but I think a well-timed break for IU. We'll see how they're able to come out against Illinois and what's a really big game. But I think it was great to get that road win, as you mentioned, going into a week of preparation. And you get onto a pretty steady cadence of games where, the next few are Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So, you can get into a little bit of rhythm in terms of game preparation and things like that. So we'll see if that pays dividends for a team that has started slow more often than not. I'm not sure a week layoff is the cure to that problem necessarily, but we'll find out on Saturday. But I think, excited for them to get some rest, be able to, watch film of what they've done and really prepare well for an Illinois team that's playing really well. I was kind of hoping their game against Wisconsin last night would go into a couple of overtimes, but that didn't work out. So what are you going to do? But no, good win by the Lady Hoosiers leading up to the game tonight. And I know we'll try to keep this at least relatively short because Jeff and Kathy are planning to come on after and do their show, doing the work to talk about the win. So IU scores the last 14 in regulation to get a 10-point win. In a game that I think I saw somebody say in front of less than 30 fans. So They got a few students managed to get their way in, one in a banana suit, and you can't turn anybody away at the door who bothered to go to the game in those conditions in a banana suit. So good for them to get a win, and hopefully get a couple pair of wins this weekend with IU playing with the men playing Illinois and the ladies playing Purdue.
All right, and also joining us, it's the one and only Galen Clavio. Galen, what's on your mind in this idle week of Indiana basketball?
I think I tweeted this earlier in the week. I'm happy to have a week off. Like, it's been an intense couple of months overall, and in a good way in a lot of ways. But I think everybody needed a breather. It's kind of like the football bye week in college, except I feel like there's hope on the other end of this bye week for IU. So I'm excited about that, and just looking forward to getting refreshed and getting back out there on Saturday.
And, okay, here's what we're going to cover this week. We're going to talk about the weekend preview. There is a big game, IU versus Illinois on Saturday, and even a bigger event following at Switchyard with the Assembly Call live podcast show. We'll preview that here in segment 1. In segment 2, Andy and I will talk about the best and worst cases for IU from an NCAA bracket perspective. And then in segment 3, as usual, you guys have come through with some incredible questions. We'll do a mailbag segment here in segment 3. All of that is coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. This edition of Assembly Call Radio, just like all the shows on the Back Home Network, is presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere, with beloved logos like the 2 different versions of the Bison. And Home Field has something for fans and grads of other schools, considering their product line now extends to more than 120 different schools with unique vintage logos for all of them. And no matter what you buy, you know it will be comfortable and the colors will last through many washings. Plus, you're supporting an Indiana-based company that came up through Kelly. What could be better than that? So go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME for 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay, the big game this weekend, IU is going to host league-leading Illinois in a big game. It's a quad 1 game for us bracketologists. It's just a really big game for any IU fans. Illinois has their full complement of players back. At least Curbelo played against Wisconsin. Kofi Coburn is back as well. So Curbelo only had 12 minutes against Wisconsin, so we'll see if he has some increased minutes, and sometimes maybe that's a good thing because he has been turnover prone this week. Fellas, Galen, we'll go to you too. What are your thoughts about facing this Illinois team at this time?
I mean, I think now is a good time to face them. They're very full of themselves. They've had 2 nice wins at home over the last couple of weeks with Michigan State, and then obviously the game last night against Wisconsin. They were very impressive in the game against Wisconsin. I thought Wisconsin made some curious decisions in the way that they decided to play defensively against Illinois. I'm still not convinced Illinois is that great of a team. Like, I think they're okay, but I think if you look at their numbers, they rely a lot on the 3-point shot, and they really don't have any impressive wins away from home unless you really want to count that win in Iowa City as impressive. And I mean, Indiana couldn't win in Iowa City, so I guess it's somewhat impressive. But I don't know. I talked at the beginning of the year, and I said I thought this Illinois team was way overrated, and I still kind of believe that. I think that they would be very difficult to play in Champaign this week, but fortunately that's not happening. So I'm okay with this. I think Indiana comes in with a good mentality, good attitude, and they've already defended Purdue, who presents the same problems basically that Illinois does, except better in terms of offense. So I kind of like Indiana's chances in this one.
Andy, as Illinois gets ready to come in, what are the keys for you in Indiana pulling out a victory?
Well, a few of them, I would say, Coburn and Trace is really the big individual matchup, and it's one that has been kind of the textbook matchup, if you will, to give Trace problems. You got a guy who's super physical, who really bodies him up forces him to take tough shots a little bit further out from the basket than he would like. And so he hasn't had a ton of success there, at least from an efficiency standpoint. I think he's put up numbers in some of the games, but in terms of normal shooting percentage, hasn't really been as close to that as you might like. So trying to figure out ways to do that. Now, the flip side of that is, Illinois doesn't tend to play a bigger guy at the 4 spot. So do you have some ability where maybe Race Thompson becomes a guy who can get some baskets inside? They're playing, typically 6'6", 6'7" guys at the 4. So maybe you're able to give yourself a little bit of an advantage that way. I think the other matchup to really watch is the point guard spot. Xavier Johnson has been doing everything for IU, as we've talked about. Trent Frazier, one of the better defenders in the league, will almost surely draw that assignment. So who do you have that can really create offense? I think that becomes a big opportunity for Trey Galloway when he's in the game to be able to be that guy from the wing, initiating some of the offense and really putting pressure on the defense. So Illinois can really shoot it. You can't get too in love with trying to dig down and take Coburn away and not be able to close out the shooters effectively. So, I think the 3-point shooting will be big, and can IU get some shots for, Parker Stewart and Miller Kopp, because it's Illinois is pretty small on the perimeter. So, how long can Kopp really be out there? Cause who's he going to guard and different things like that to start the game. I think the matchups will be there. So it makes it interesting to see what Woodson will do from a substitution standpoint.
We had some really good questions along these lines. Joey Berkowitz asked, how do you see IU defending Kofi on Saturday? IU Artifacts adds, do you anticipate IU doubling on Kofi Saturday? And does that present a problem with the 3-point shooters and closing out? And Joey also asked, how do you see IU attacking IU's defense? They play a lot of drop coverage. Kofi and ball screens is not very good, has not been very good in the past. Andy, you've kind of hinted upon on some of that. Do you see I think the Indiana defense is the key, because if they do what they did against Purdue, which was push the post out and then stay tight with the cutters and the guards, they've proven that is a way to slow down a real potent offense. They have stopped Ohio State. They have stopped Purdue's offense to a level where it allowed Indiana to win some games. Do you see that continuing, that kind of style of defense continuing?
Yeah, you've probably watched this better than I have. I do think when they've played better post players, they have run doubles at them at times. I don't think it's been a consistent thing, and I think they've almost done it to see how the other team reacts to it and then assess from there whether that's a viable strategy going forward. So I would assume you'll see a little bit of that, at least with Coburn. Now, whether that ends up being a good idea or a bad idea, we'll find out pretty quickly, and I think they can adjust from there. But I would imagine that that's what they do to him. But I think the other question in terms of you really got to make Coburn guard somebody and not just be able to sit there in the middle of the lane waiting to try to block shots and pushing TJD out. So maybe that's where some actions with Trace and Race might be helpful together to see what they can do. But you can't go away. You can't steer clear of him entirely, because the opportunity to get him in foul trouble, that really helped Purdue in that game. They got him in early foul trouble when they played in Champaign, and he was basically saddled with that the entire game.
Galen, Indiana has played better when their point guards have played well, whether it's an attacking style at the rim or being able to hit some key shots. Xavier Johnson's been a little more consistent. Rob Finney's out. Lander got some run against Maryland. And so Joey's second question about attacking the defense, a lot of teams are locking down on shooters and letting that point guard make or break it against them. How do you feel about Indiana's point guard play? Is it important? Is it going to be okay, in your opinion, against Illinois on Saturday?
I mean, certainly it's important. I think it'll be fine. I mean, the one thing you worry about, and it hasn't been that big of a deal over the course of the last few weeks with IU's point guards, is their turnovers. But Xavier Johnson's really kind of clamped down on that, and Illinois does not do a good job of forcing turnovers anyway. That's not part of how they roll defensively. So, the big thing with Illinois that you have to deal with on the defensive front is, as was mentioned earlier, getting good shots, high percentage shots, and that's really where they shine. It's interesting because I kind of feel like it's a slightly different version of Indiana that Indiana will be playing when they play Illinois. Like, they do a lot of the same things well. I think Illinois probably shoots the ball from outside slightly better. So the big question ultimately to me is going to be, it's not so much the point guard position, but what do they get out of Parker Stewart and Miller Kopp? They cannot afford to have slow starts or lack of offensive contribution from either of those guys throughout the course of the game, because that can be the great equalizer for this Indiana team. If Johnson's driving, or if Galloway's driving and they're only looking inside and there's nobody sitting there to kick out to hit a shot from the 3-point line, it's probably not going to be a very good day for Indiana. So to me, that's going to be the big situation that Indiana has to try to take advantage of. And if they can't get good games out of those guys, then I think it could be a long night.
I agree, and I think didn't have a chance to talk about the Maryland game last Saturday, but when I rewatched it, I saw a lot more movement early. Some sets and some things where you both had the shooter coming off screens, but you also had a post option as a secondary option. And so it seems like Woodson might be going to a little bit more of that at times as well, which talks about getting those shooters going early. And then if they get hot, then that draws the defensive attention away from the inside. So I think you're exactly correct.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at that Wisconsin-Illinois game last night. I mean, Coburn ends up with 37, I believe. And for as much as he was dominating, this, I guess, is an argument for the let Kofi get his and see what you can do. I mean, Wisconsin was shooting terribly. Now, they weren't always the best shots, but, they ended up, what was it? I think they might have hit one. I think they hit one at the very end. So they're 3 of 24 on threes. Johnny Davis didn't shoot it well other than getting to the free throw line. So Wisconsin, despite some kind of oddities in their game plan, really, if they shoot anywhere near what their normal percentage is a lot closer game than what it ended up being. So again, maybe that's an argument to just let Kofi get his and try to do a good job on everybody else. But if you end up shooting 3 of 24 from 3 in a situation like that, you're not going to beat too many teams, let alone a good one. So, but I think, hopefully that's a situation IU makes one early, really kind of gets things going from the crowd and things get rolling from there.
Regardless of what happens in Assembly Hall on Saturday, we got a lot of stuff going on this weekend. We have a post-game event at Switchyard. Also, we'll announce here that if you're going to the game, first of all, drive safely from wherever you're coming from. But Assembly Call community members are meeting at the State of Indiana mural with the old wood floor at halftime. I believe that's in the North Concourse for a group photo. So as soon as halftime hits, make your way there and get together and take a picture. We want to make this every game thing. So let's get started on Saturday. But the live post-game show is what we're here to talk about now at Switchyard after the game. Probably start around 3:00. Anthony Leal and some other special guests will be there. We're already at the RSVP maximum, but there may be standing room only available. Show up and tell them you're with Assembly Call and see if you can't sneak your way in. Galen and others will be at Switchyard during the game for anyone who doesn't have tickets to the actual game. And then weather permitting, the Assembly Call crew will be out. It'll be a shortened crew. I am battling 13 to 15 inches of snow up here and just now got the driveway clear. And I have a basketball game at 11 o'clock on Saturday, weather permitted. And Andy's facing like 57 inches of ice in Cincinnati right now. So, we might not make the Saturday stuff, but we'll be there in spirit. But plan on being there at Switchyard. Galen, would you like to talk about what's on tap at Switchyard? Our thanks out to you. You do a tremendous job of being the boots on the ground in Bloomington for all of us who are not there. And so thank you from all of us for all of your hard work in getting that ready. And what's in store for Saturday?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. As you mentioned a lot of it already. I think we're still working on some of the final details. I'm going to be there when the game starts, probably even before that. So if you're going to be around, come on down. And if you're lucky enough to get tickets, I don't have tickets. My wife took the tickets this time, so I'm stuck out watching it from a distance. But we'll probably chat a little bit on the PA. We've done some shows there before. We did a couple of football shows back when we thought football was going to have a good season. We've got the tech down as far as that's concerned. We'll have a little stage set up there. And then after the game is over, I think we will probably mingle for a little bit. We'll have people slowly start to come in. We'll wait for the crew, whoever is able to get there. There might be a raffle of some sort involved. I think we've got that cleared up now, so you'll have the opportunity to take part in that. And then, we'll be doing a live kind of slightly postponed post-game show starting a couple hours after the game's over. That'll give everybody who RSVP'd enough time to get out of the assembly hall and get over to Switchyard. So looking forward to it. If you haven't been to Switchyard before, there's some parking info I think that we've put up on the community site. So that's always a good thing to check out. And other than that, great pizza, and they've got a variety of really, really good beers. So it'll be a fun time even before the podcast gets rolling, and we're looking forward to it starting. And I think Jared hopefully will be there as well, as he just popped on. He looks
serious. For the weather already.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, okay.
Well,
he definitely looks prepared for the weather at the very least.
Yeah. He is ready to fly into Indianapolis for sure. He still can't hear us.
All right,
but
well,
yes, I'll tell you what, I had the cheese sticks or the cheese pizza bread, whatever, with Chris IU Artifacts. We were down there before the game, and Switchyard, really nice place. And we were there in 2019 for the last time we had a meetup. We missed, or 2020 after the Purdue game. And then last year we did not have a meetup. So excellent place. Looking forward to hear all the good stories, and wishing I would be there. Jared, are you connected now with us? Can you hear us?
I am. I can hear you.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I keep checking my American Airlines flight for tomorrow at 7 a.m. It still says that it's on. So, I'm anticipating it'll probably be delayed, I would imagine, but I'm so excited to get there and, to see everybody, to get to Bloomington, and to get this event going. It's going to be really fun. And we have a few surprises in store too that we haven't really announced. Some special guests that are going to be coming. We got the raffle is going to be kind of crazy. We've got a lot of stuff that we're raffling off. So it's going to be, and the best part is just getting all of our community members together. It's just going to be so awesome having so many of us under one roof, having not being, able to do it last year. I just can't wait, man. It's going to be great.
Well, we wish you safe travels, and probably the biggest part of your trip is going to be once you land in getting from Indianapolis to Bloomington, and hopefully the main roads are cleared out and everything's okay.
I will say on that, I'll be really surprised if the roads aren't in excellent shape by the time things get going. It's still snowing here lightly in some parts of Bloomington. But they'll work on the roads all day tomorrow. And we've seen NDOT, they do a pretty good job once they got the trucks out. So I think even by like tomorrow at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, everything should be fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Unless you live in Lafayette. And then
which I have in the past.
Yes.
In the Lafayette area. And there are, you can only travel for emergency purposes. But maybe even then, people can get down for the show. Anything else, gentlemen, about the show before we move on to segment 2?
The only other thing I want to say about it is, if you haven't signed up yet or RSVP'd, but you still want to go, send me an email, jared@assemblycall.com, because as some people are having travel issues and can't come, they're having to cancel. So, look, we would want to have everybody there, and it's possible if this keeps growing, we may have to take over all of Switchyard or do a different venue, whatever, but we want to get as many people as we can who want to go there. So, I know if you looked at the list, a few days ago and it said that it was full, some spots may have come open. And please, if you're going to be around, just try, because I know they're going to work with us to try and get as many people in as possible. For whatever's safe. They have limits of what they can get in. But we want to get as many people there as possible. And at a minimum, if for some reason you can't get to Switchyard, let us know so we can meet you up afterwards. This is, it's the best part about coming is getting to meet everybody who's there. So if you're coming to see us, to see the show, for whatever reason it doesn't work out, we definitely want to meet you, say hi, and thank you for supporting us for all these years. So let's do whatever we have to do to make that happen. Email me, send a tweet, whatever. We'll make it happen.
So the guys have a great game on Saturday. They're going to win, and then the celebration is going to be at Switchyard. And so make your way there as quick as you possibly can and meet up and have a great time in Bloomington, everyone.
Yep,
So
agree. I like Coach said, he's not going to be able to make it. I'm not going to be able to make it, which I kind of knew going in. My daughter has a game that day. We play the undefeated top team in the league, so hopefully we'll be able to spring the upset. Although it seems fairly unlikely based on what I've seen of the other team and what I've seen from us. But you never know.
It's okay.
So,
all of my arguing with Ryan, it's culminated in this, where it's just going to be the two of us
just
up
the
there.
two of
We'll
you
come
to hash
blows.
things out. Yes, Coach and I are gently stepping away and letting you guys.
the voices of reason aren't showing up, but someone gets the video of this, please.
We have Galen there. Galen is there.
I guess I'm bringing all the backup podcasting equipment. I have this vision of like headsets getting tossed like pies around the brew pub. Jeez.
Yeah. Oh, and as is mentioned in the chat, and I think I mentioned it before, the IU women play Purdue on Sunday. So for those who are going to be around, 2 good games over the course of the weekend, and hopefully 2 victories.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
Joel has offered to officiate the match between.
Now that I want to see.
Oh boy,
yeah, I agree.
Hey, coming up on Assembly Call Radio, the Hoosiers have put themselves in a strong NCAA tournament position after a strong January. What are the reasonable best and worst case scenarios we foresee for February? That's next here on the Assembly Call. All right. Hello, chat mob. Thanks for joining us. We got over 100 people live. Hopefully you're staying warm, have a nice warm drink in hand, tuning in, and enjoying a little bit of basketball.
Yes. Galen, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys. I look forward to seeing you, Jared. Keep me posted on things as you come in.
I will. As long as I get there by 7 tomorrow night. That's all I care about. See you guys at dinner.
We'll be in good shape. All right, guys. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you all, and we'll catch all you in the chat at the event, hopefully. So
yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Galen.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Dude, you look really badass with that hat on. I mean,
Do I?
Yeah. Like if I need to go into a battle with a school board member, I would really want you right behind me, ready to grab the microphone.
It's the black hoodie and the hat. Hey,
Oh,
I've been known to intimidate. All right, I'll bounce off here so you guys can do this. I gotta go get packed and I gotta get all kinds of stuff done before tomorrow morning. But that's
all right.
Well,
Be
hey,
safe.
Pop on, say
definitely.
hey.
Safe travels. Hopefully everything goes smoothly and everything is good. So yeah, bummed I won't be able to make it for that. And even like dinner, I told Coach before we got on, it's basically been like, we probably got like 2 inches of ice and sleet here at this point. I'm not sure it's changed to snow yet, but
man, it's just this
rough.
whole planning this whole thing was so hard. Only having the one Saturday Big Ten game. So we only had the one weekend and then we get the weather. So
yeah.
That's all right. Next year we will have one where we can all be there.
We choose warm weather.
Yeah.
Cover a warm weather sport next time.
It'll be much smoother.
Figure out. Yeah. Who knows? Anyway. All right. Well.
All right. Have a good
enjoy
rest
it.
Of the show,
enjoy
guys.
it for us, and we'll be watching everything for sure.
I will. All right, everybody. I'll see you guys down.
All right, Jared. Be safe.
See y'all.
See ya.
All right, you ready to roll?
Bracketology. Why not?
Let's get going so the doing the work crew can get going too. They do such good work with the women's post game show. So we want to get our job done and then make sure they have a time because you know
like Kathy's planning to start drive in tomorrow. So she's got. I know she's got a time difference, but
Coach Marlowe needs his beauty sleep. You know, if you've ever watched the show, you know he needs some extra sleep in order to look halfway decent. So we got to make sure he gets to bed on time. All right, here we go.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys, Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. Tonight's episode is also sponsored by Superior Insulators, owned by longtime listener and IU season ticket holder Brad, who will be at the February 5th event at Switchyard on Saturday. And with winter weather here, obviously we're getting hit with it, the timing is perfect to tell you about their high-performance insulation and air barrier systems for both residential and commercial. And you know their work is high quality because they did the air barrier systems and spray foam for the IU Excellence Academy. They also worked on the IU football locker room, Marching 100 Hall, and many other buildings on campus. Visit insulators.com to learn more and schedule your appointment. That's insulators.com, INSEALATORS.com to learn more. And thank you, Brad, for your continued support of the show. So besides two awesome-looking guys who do Assembly Call Radio, Andy and I both dabble in the bracket world, and I think that we're very successful in both our ventures. I owe a lot to Andy in getting us started here at Delphi Bracketology. He was a teacher, a mentor to me, so I look up to him and his work with the bracket, and I know all of our students who have experienced what we do at Delphi Bracketology also thank Andy for sharing his expertise 5, 6, 7 years ago. So,
well, you guys have been beating me more often than not in recent years, so I'm looking for somebody to return the favor and to mentor me. So just throwing that out there as you move into the stretch run here.
Thank you. But what we found out is like more minds, it helps, because every time I put the initial list together, then the 8 or 9 people in the club always move teams around, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense, rather than just me doing it by myself. So I think there's a unfair advantage to having a committee do that. So Andy and I are going to look at a couple things where Indiana would stand right now if the season ended, and it's the best case and worst case scenario for your Hoosiers, and what we kind of predict. So we'll just go along that lines. Andy, where do you see Indiana seated right now if you had to make a choice?
Yeah, when I did my bracket earlier in the week, I had him as a 7, probably to the low end of the 7 line, I think. I mean, there's only 4 teams on it, so it's not that huge of a difference. But and I don't know that a ton of the results from earlier in this week probably would have moved them up or down substantially. If anything, might have helped them a little bit. But that's where I've got him right now. I think that's I've seen ones that have them lower, and I think there's an argument to be made there. I mean, the reality is that the non-conference strength of schedule is not good. 335th, I think, as of today. They've got 2 wins over teams in the field, maybe 3 if you consider Notre Dame being kind of in the mix at least, which after they won at Miami last night, that was a good result. And half of IU's wins are quad 4. So if you wanted to find reasons to push them lower on the list, I think that's fair. And they've lost to teams, while they don't have a quote unquote bad loss in terms of it being in quad 3 and quad 4, they've also lost to 3 teams that if the tournament started today wouldn't be in the field in terms of Michigan, Penn State, and Syracuse. So there's things to like, there's things to nitpick. So like I said, I had him as a 7. If somebody wants to have him as an 8 or a 9, I think there's justification to do that. Once you get to the 8 line, coaches, I'm sure you guys have seen, it is just an absolute mess. From 8 to the cut line is just kind of a real mess. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, we have them as a 7. We had our meeting today. We're on a snow delay, so it was nice. I actually could spend an hour with the guys instead of 30 minutes before school. And we just went through all of our seed lines, Andy, and did a real scrub. And Indiana right now for us is comfortably in the 7 seed range for 2 reasons. One, they beat Purdue and Ohio State, and they have 2 road wins. That road win was lacking early in December. That kept them down. And like you said, there's enough to say Indiana should be lower. Start looking at teams like we have St. Mary's, Loyola, BYU, Boise State, North Carolina, Colorado State. All those teams are in the 8-9. There's nothing that really just jumps out and says, wow, they're a lot better than the Indiana ball club. And then the metrics are good too at a 30 net, the offense and defensive efficiency. And I also think that, there's someone in charge of the Big Ten Conference who's looking at these teams. Indiana's had those losses, but only the Michigan game have they really been out of, and I think that's why their net is at a 30 where they're at. So I think they're a 7. And, Andy, I thought that they've really kind of solidified that because other teams have lost. Loyola lost to Drake last week. BYU had a horrible loss to Pacific.
Pacific, yeah.
Pacific, yeah. And then Colorado State lost to Wyoming. And so you have some teams that might put pressure on moving Indiana down to 8 or 9 that aren't. So I think they're benefiting from that, at least from our vantage point here at Delphi Bracketology. And so let's go to the best case scenario and worst case scenario for the Hoosiers in your bracket. Where do you see them climbing and where do you see them potentially falling?
Yeah, I mean, best case is, it's kind of funny. You'd almost have to go through and pick games to figure out what your best case. I mean, your true best case scenario is winning out, but I think that's probably not in the realm of possibility. I guess I would view best case scenario as you win at Northwestern, you win at Minnesota, so you pick up a couple other road wins. You beat Maryland or Rutgers at home. Those are your 2 other potential bad losses, and then that leaves you Illinois at home, at Michigan State, Wisconsin at home, at Ohio State, and at Purdue. So that's 5 games there. Maybe you win the home games and lose the road games in that scenario. I think if you do that, like that to me is probably a realistic best case scenario. Maybe they could do better than that. Who knows?
Yeah, JD
Go
Hoosier. I'll throw the question here because it fits right to what you're saying. He said, "Where do you see IU being seated if they hold serve, meaning 6-3?" And by holding serve, they're using Ken Palm's win-loss projections, and so they lose at MSU, lose at Ohio State, and lose at Purdue, and win the 2 quad 1 games at home. So that's very close to what you were saying.
Yeah, I think it might actually. I probably could have saved myself some thought there and just gone with the Ken because that's what I was looking at to see the schedule. And so now that I look back at it, that's exactly where I ended up. And just could have read the question. So I think if you do that, I think you push your way into the 5 conversation. Maybe the 4, just depends a lot. I think that's one of the things that I've come to understand about this a little bit better with doing it is that it's not just what you do, it's what everybody around you does. And to your point, I would say IU hasn't moved from the 7 line, even though there might be reasons to push them down because nobody else behind them has really come up and done anything. So, I'll kind of give that qualifier on it. But I think if they do that, I think you could end up in a 4 or 5 range. You'd still end up with no bad losses. You pick up a couple other road wins in that scenario, and you pick up a couple other quad 1 wins, which feels pretty good. The knock on you at that point is you don't have a quad 1 win away from home. But I think there's plenty of teams who've been in that scenario and been seated okay. So that's kind of what I would say. I mean, what do you think happens in that situation?
I'm looking at the teams above them, and they already have – a lot of teams already have 4. The seed line above LSU is 4 quad 1s, 5 quad 2s. That's 9. Indiana only has 4 combined. And LSU's falling. Xavier has 4 quad 1 already. Iowa State 6. And we know that can fluctuate with those, just arbitrary cutoffs. That can all, Alabama is above them with 6. So, but you also have in the 5 seed line, Michigan State has 3 quad 1s, Tennessee has 3, and Ohio State has 3. If you pass some of those teams up, I think the best case scenario at 6-3 is they're 4-5 in quad 1, and they're 5-4, or 4-3 in quad 2 if that plays out. That question, and so you're 500 in quad 1 and 2, and I think the highest for them is a 5 seed. If that plays out, obviously, if they win out, they're going to move up into that range. But I think the 5, 6, 7 range is a comfortable place for them, absorbing a couple losses and getting some wins. I think that's where you're going to find Indiana, barring a major collapse. And so what is that worst case scenario that we all don't really, we'll go real brief on this because we don't want to like to talk about that, but what is the worst case scenario to happen?
Yeah, I think, the worst case scenario piece is tricky because I think the worst case scenario is that you play badly enough that you shine a light more on some of the things that aren't as good, that non-conference strength of schedule comes into play, that you don't win any more road games, that you end up 2 and whatever in true road games, even though you got the Notre Dame one as a neutral court win. Truly worst case, do you pick up a quad 3 loss to a Maryland or a Rutgers? It just depends how bad how bad is worst case. And I guess if somebody says, well, worst case is the worst, then you'd be in some trouble. I find it hard to believe realistically based on how the team has played, in the same way they're not going to win out. They're not going to lose out either. So if you have some combination of those things, then I think you probably push yourself down to maybe I don't know, 11-ish range is probably a possibility. Because again, if they don't win another road game, you have the two knocks a lot of times that teams get dinged for are didn't play well away from home, didn't schedule well. And so right now the Maryland win help kind of mitigate the road piece of that. The non-conference strength of schedule is not going to dramatically move one way or the other from here on out. So that's always going to be there as a blemish. It's just a matter of the road stuff. So I guess I tend to say 11. Like, you could push yourself toward the cut line if you really play poorly down the stretch.
Yeah, and here's the thing about the non-conference schedule. We look at trends to try to figure kind of where the committee goes. And we know each committee is different every year. You've been doing this longer than we've had. We looked at trends. And since we've tracked everything on our spreadsheet, we've kept the final results since 2016. Only 5 teams with the strength of schedule non-conference of over 300 have ever made the field. And so we're looking at, I think, a couple of teams in the 7 seed range for us right now. USC is 317 non-conference. A 7 seed in Indiana is 337 non-conference schedule. Those are huge blemishes for both USC and Indiana, that if Indiana loses and goes 2-7 in their last 9 games, 3 or 6, I absolutely agree with you that could be an issue coming up. The reason it won't necessarily be an issue is it's a bunch of carnage, as it is almost every year at the back end when you have, you're talking Indiana being 2-6, 2-7 in quad 1. You already have that in our bracket at some point. We have Oklahoma in at 2-7 in quad 1 as a 10 seed. Teams that are out, Andy, West Virginia is 2-7, and we know they're going to get more losses in the Big 12. Both of those teams are going to get more losses in the Big 12. Florida, is 1-5, and they're in our first 4 out. So, there's some room for Indiana to have a rough stretch. You don't want it because you don't want to put it in the committee's hands. What do you believe is likely? And what do you think Indiana, let's put it this way. What do you think Indiana must do to be guaranteed a call on Selection Sunday?
Yeah, the one other thing before I answer that, the one other thing that I don't know if you'd say they have this going for them or not, but when you look at the different types of metrics, so the quote unquote what I call the results based metrics in terms of KPI, strength of record, BPI, they average out to right around low 30s, I would say. And then if you look at the predictive, so Sagarin, KenPom, they're the KPI and strength of record are the 2 results based ones. So sorry, they're in the say mid 30s on that, 37-ish. They're 24th in all the kind of quality based ones. So they don't have one of those that really stands out as bad. So I think that helps a little bit. I think the most likely scenario is, well, so to answer your question, the minimum of what they need to do to get in, I think you avoid those quad 3 losses. So you beat Maryland and Rutgers at home. I think you win at least one more road game. I think if you win both Northwestern and Minnesota on the road, and do those other 2, that makes you 11-9 in the league as it is. That gets you to 20 wins. Again, I don't think they're going to lose all 5 of the other games that are there. So you take one of those and get there. So I think the likely scenario is they probably end up right about where they are right now. Is it possible they could move a little bit to a 6 or an 8? Sure. But I think based on the way the team's played, I don't think they're playing in a way that suggests they're going to totally collapse. But I also think they're not playing in a way that says they're going to go off on some huge run necessarily and go, lose, 2 games the rest of the way either, 1 or 2 games the rest of the way. So I feel like where they're at right now is probably fairly close to where they end up.
The ideal situation for me, Andy, is going. You have 5 quad 1 games where they're at right now. If Northwestern moves up a little bit, they're on that one of those arbitrary cutoffs there at 78. You play a Northwestern on the road, they move up to 72. That becomes a quad 1. But as of right now, there are 5 quad 1 games, 2 quad 2, and 2 quad 3. Win the quad 3, which are games at home. Protect home court. If you go 2 and 3 in your 5 quad 1 games, that puts you 1 game under 500 in quad 1 and 1 game over 500. And so that's what you got, 2 and 3, and then you win so you go 6 wins. You get 5 wins, I think you're safe. You get 6, definitely, but 4 of those are quad 2 and quad 3 is what I'm saying. So if you get 2 more quad 1 wins, I think 4 gets you in at the 6-7 seed range, likely, depending on what the committee emphasizes. You don't win any of those quad 1s, and now you're looking at 2 and 7 in quad 1. Now you got to start sweating a little bit on Selection Sunday. Jeff Marlowe asked, with the focus being on the quad 1 victories, are there potential bad losses? Just the 2 home games against Rutgers, I think, in Maryland could be bad losses as far as quad 3 losses. And I think once Indiana gets to 20, I would never like to put numbers, magical numbers, because it's who you beat that matters. But is there a number of total wins, Andy, where you think that represents good quad wins overall?
I mean, I kind of am like you. I think if you won, almost wouldn't matter what the combination was. If you won 5 more, not just because you're getting to 21. If you won 5 more, you either took care of business in those 4, the 2 quote unquote winnable road games and the 2 home games that you can't lose, and then you got one other one, which is going to be likely a quad 1 opportunity there. I think if you do that, even if you switch some of those around, that just means you got more quad 1 wins in order to offset some of the other stuff. So I feel like 5 would feel good. I know we don't want to probably assess what the Big Ten tournament could do from a good or bad standpoint to the resume, but I would say, but yeah, I think if you win 5, you'd feel pretty good. I think if you win 4, you start to probably have some questions, because at that point you either lost all the tough games or you lost to maybe somebody that you didn't feel like you should have.
So speaking of the tournament, if Indiana's 21 wins and has 3 quad 1 wins and 4 quad 2, I think they're in safely. Are you with me on the conference tourneys can get someone into a tournament if they make a run? More than likely their seed, especially the top 7 or 8 seeds, are somewhat etched in stone, barring 1 win or 2 wins might not move the needle, but maybe a win, a 4-game win or a 3-game win in the conference tournament may make a big difference in the seed line. Do you agree with that, or do you think, because sometimes I think we overemphasize those last 2 or 3 games for seeding purposes? I think they're more used for selection purposes of teams that might be out that make their case to be in.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think there's times that you see every week you get down to, here's a couple of teams that really need a win, and if they respond in that scenario, it definitely feels like the committee takes notice of that, and perhaps that's recency bias, but I do think you see some of that where somebody gets on a tear and it maybe gets overinflated a little bit, gets somebody in the field. And with the Big Ten tournament, the way there's so many different levels of buys and all that stuff, it's kind of dependent upon where you finish at the end of the regular season and who you actually have to play. If you get a double buy and you lose your first game, you're losing to somebody pretty good in all likelihood, right? And it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think it's easy to get swept up in that because it's an exciting week, and for us, you're kind of getting to the end of the road with bracketology, and that makes it exciting. But the committee at least would say, the game at the end is no more important than game number 1. And how you've played recently is not taken into account any differently. It used to be the last 10 or 12 games, they actually did hold some weight, and that was something that was on the team sheets and the committee looked at. They've gone away from that. We can argue whether that makes sense or it doesn't make sense, but that's what they've done. And so we kind of live and die with it. And I think IU fans probably even more so, just because of the horrific track record in the Big Ten tournament, that everything seems inherently worse when you're in that stretch of it. But yeah, I think that's probably important to keep in mind. I think it can help teams who are right on the bubble that said, they get some credit for, hey, they were in a tough situation. They responded. They showed up and played well when they had to. That speaks to their overall quality. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I do think you see a team or two each year that kind of gets that bump from being in that scenario.
Well, let's hope IU is safely in come Big Ten tournament time, and then maybe we get on a run and we move from a 7 to a 6 seed line. But your Indiana Hoosiers have really, despite the Michigan loss, have really made a good case for themselves in the Big Ten. So coming up on our third segment, we'll answer your questions as we always do. So stick around with us here on the Assembly Call. All right. Hey, Lisa, talking brackets isn't that bad. Winnable games. It doesn't hurt that much. I know it's scary talk, but, looking at my spreadsheet, it's made me really, really happy recently. And I know that it can all crumble. But at many times at this point, last few years, maybe we weren't even close to having IU as a 7 seed. So
it's good to be in the conversation in a way that is not totally bubble related or some kind of fairy tale. If this series of unlikely events happens, what could happen? So
yeah,
in that regard, it's good to talk about it and be talking about IU as opposed to talking about other teams. That's for sure.
It's been 5 years of doing this, and you're sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, can Indiana get in? What do they need to do to get in?" And they still have that. So I don't want to put the
Yep.
too much make you guys feel too comfortable, but
agreed.
But my spreadsheet work has been very, very the last 3 weeks has been a lot more enjoyable than the last 2 or 3 years. So read that as you want, chat mob,
for sure.
And a win Saturday is huge, and a loss isn't that bad. That's the other thing too that people I've tried to educate people, Andy, on. It's like a loss doesn't mean you drop down from 7 to 10 just because you had one loss. It's still in comparison, and this is where there's a little bit of comfort for me because those teams in the 8, 9, 10 seed range have done a lot of losing recently. Oklahoma to TCU, and so we can't just look at Indiana in a bubble. You look at the other teams around them, and Andy and I can give you a whole list of teams to start rooting against to make
basically the entire better. Mountain West root for everybody in that conference to lose. No, you're right. Everybody has blemishes at that point because you don't get into the 8, 9, 10, 11 range because you've been playing awesome. So everybody has things that you can look at and say this team isn't good. It doesn't deserve this. So, but yeah, you're right. Some of these, it's not formulaic in the sense of, oh, well, each loss equals, you drop 3 spots down the seed, down the seed list. That's not really it. So
real quick, an example of that is like Baylor's lost 3 of their last 7, but you look at their resume and they're still a number 1 seed. Now it might be more dangerous of falling into the 2 seed line than they were 3 or 4 weeks ago. But when you have 7 quad 1 wins, it doesn't matter if you lost 3 of your last 7. That's an example that I try to share with people. But the last couple of weeks when I started, I start from scratch, Andy. Every time I refresh everything, I get the net. I put it in net order 1 through whatever from Warren Nolan, and then I go back up and I sort it on the spreadsheet. So every day is a new start for me. It's somewhat tedious process. But I like doing that because then I don't see, well, this team was here. Now I got to move them here. I don't visually see it, even though I know kind of where teams were at.
Kind of on the back of your head where you had them. But
but it's a lot of work to start from scratch every day. But I've kind of fallen into a habit of doing it somewhat quickly. And the sort tool is kind of nice.
Yep.
And we go on. So,
all right.
Well, all right, let's go and knock out
we'll
these
turn
questions.
it over to Jeff and Kathy here.
Jeff and Kathy are warming up in the bullpen. Kathy's probably in her hot tub prepping for this in the snow and cold weather of Iowa before she drives in. Be safe driving, Kathy. Have a good show to the two of you. So here we go in the third segment. Questions. Here we go.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
It's time now for our mailbag. All questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about and also join. Go to assemblycall.com/community. That's assemblycall.com/community.
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
So good to have Jay submitting these mediocre questions again. But he asked, does IU's current situation in terms of play results, progress, and NCAA tournament status seeding outlook remind you of any past IU teams?
Oh, man. I spent the time that I was going to spend researching this question by pulling all the other questions out of the community. So I'm not sure I did a great job of that one. Boy, I don't really know in terms of any real recent ones as I think of it that way. I mean, as you look at the years that they got in under, Crean, they were a 4, a 1, they were a 10. I don't know that it really reminds me of that particular season because they played so poorly down the stretch. That was the year they lost to Wichita State in the tournament. I don't know that one feels right. I was trying to look at one that just
that's probably
like,
the closest one because the others
were
they were Big Ten
like
champions
range, yeah.
At 5. They were Big Ten champions at a 5 seed in 2016. I know when they won that and went to the Sweet 16. And I don't think this team is that close to that.
Yeah, I don't think at this point in the season, I don't think so. And then you look at the team that, Sampson ended up, when
that
he
was
got
an 8 seed.
When he got fired, they ended up as an 8, even though the record was good, but all the uncertainty and the things that, kind of the way they played, down the stretch in that situation is kind of hard to equate anything to. His first season, they were a 7. That might not be a terrible comp. For that one, they ended up 10-6 in the Big Ten, but kind of never really reeled off a bunch of Big Ten wins. Never lost more than a couple games in a row. That was a team that beat Gonzaga pretty handily in the first round, and then that was the where Ben Howland is basically guarding Lance Stembler on the inbound pass in the second round. So maybe that one. I guess just because there's not a lot of, which I guess is, I'm trying to look at the year of that as I'm thinking through it. That was 2007. So maybe that one, but it doesn't feel like any of the Crean teams. So then you kind of just get back further than that, and that's the first one I came to that maybe had it. I don't know. Some of the late night teams kind of got themselves seated around that general range. Trying to think if there's one of those that maybe stands out, but I think that's just kind of different situations and things like that. So I'll say maybe that Sampson team, but it's a good question. I don't know if there's a great answer. I know Torvik has on his site where you can kind of look back at similar resumes, but I don't think any of IU's comps in that regard are other IU teams. So
thanks a lot, Jay. Good question. And let's hope it mirrors that 2016 team and gets up to a 5 seed and challenges here for the Big Ten tournament. So we had a lot of good questions from Discord and the Mighty Networks community. The Discord questions all come from members of our private Discord whose questions are used in the show receive our community coin home as a bonus. And we're going to start off with this one. Robot asks, what value do you think bracketology brings to the experience of college basketball, both for you personally and the sport generally?
I'd be curious to. I'll let you answer this one first because I think you have a unique perspective with what you've been able to build at Delphi, and then I'll kind of tack on. But I'll let you take this one first. I think you probably have a more compelling answer than I might.
Yeah, and I can go on and on, so I'll try to keep it really brief. I think bracketology adds to the college basketball viewing experience because it's not a scoreboard. Every other sport has a scoreboard. You can check the standings. You know exactly the top 3 teams are going to go or this number of wild cards and everything. And while that adds some excitement too, the bracketology offers a lot of discussion. A lot of people are now doing this as well as the famous sites, ESPN and all of those. But now there's a lot of us out there doing it. And so I think it adds to the college game. It's the same as college football with who's getting into the to the playoffs and all of that. I just think that adds to the whole thing. For me personally, it's just been a real find to do that. The notoriety that we've received across the board from a lot of people, and the connections I've made with students. We had a sophomore who didn't have a ticket to the IU Purdue game, who has been a 4-year member and a really good writer. And so we asked JD for a media pass, and he went and got us a media pass and wrote an article for us. So there's a young man who has graduated that still is doing work for us for Delphi Bracketology. It has meant a lot of great connections to people. The bracketologist I connect with across the country, Shelby Mast, is one of my favorites. He's recently had some health issues. Never met him, but I feel like he's like my brother a little bit in sounding board. So, it gives me a chance to really watch basketball, and I know a lot more about who's winning and who's losing. I don't know the rosters. I don't know the stats. I don't know the statistics or anything like that, but I can tell you, that San Francisco BYU is a game I'm going to watch tonight because I want to interpret the bracket, and I've been known to watch some America East and those kinds of conferences. And as a fan of college basketball, it's brought me even closer.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you said. I think for me, it's something that just college basketball in general is something that I've always liked, and it gives you a different angle through which to look at it. And the analytical part of it to me is enjoyable. Maybe not to everybody, but to really try to make heads or tails of how these things balance against one another with so many different teams and in different situations. And so yeah, I think it just gives a fun lens to look at it. It gives you reasons to maybe care about some other teams and watch other teams that you might not normally do because you're trying to watch games like what you said. So yeah, it like I said, it puts a different spin on something that I already enjoyed, and just gives another way to look at it.
We got a lot of questions. We're probably not going to get to all of them. We'll apologize ahead of time. We do want to get to doing the work podcast here soon. Elbows in, you ask another great question, but about we're going to go to Andy Clark real quick. Do you see a scenario where Trey starts and Parker comes off the bench moving forward? I do not. I think Woodson's pretty set in his lineups. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've talked about this a little bit. I think there's reasons I think there's fairly compelling reasons to say to do something like that, or to at the very least break up, starting Stewart and Kopp together. But I think Woodson very much strikes me as if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in his eyes, he doesn't think it's broken. You listen to comments he makes on the radio show and how the team is performing, and I think he thinks everything is going fine. So for a guy who really has not changed the starting lineup over the course of the season, I don't see any reason to do it now unless things really start to skid. And I think Trey provides valuable energy off the bench with that, and a playmaker for those guys, which becomes even more important with Rob out, just in terms of having somebody else to handle the ball with that group and be able to start things. So I would be surprised. I wouldn't be upset if it happened. But I just don't see it based on what we've seen from Woodson so far.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I would almost say Kopp for Galloway for Kopp, and keep Parker in there, and then rotate Parker and Kopp if there were a lineup adjustment to be made. Jeff Young, very interesting question here. Indiana's been playing well on the defensive end of the court, much better than they did under Archie Miller. Does the former coach deserve any credit for the turnaround? I was a big fan of Archie Miller. I don't think it worked out here for personality reasons more than the X's and O's. I don't know how much carryover. Each coach has their own style of play, and I think Coach Woodson's ability to communicate is what Archie was missing. But Archie knows basketball, and I do think the guys that were left over from his regime did benefit from his knowledge of basketball. I thought the defense was okay under Archie Miller. It wasn't super great, but it wasn't horrible. And actually right now, the offensive efficiency, it was better under Archie Miller than it is under Coach Woodson. But I think anytime you have a coaching change, the new coach is responsible for what's happening here. But the old coach probably did have a hand in developing some of the players to some extent. So I don't know if I answered that extremely well. Your thoughts, Andy, about that kind of credit to Archie Miller?
I don't know. I think I guess I would probably give credit more in the sense of recruiting some kids who are able to take the coaching that Woodson has given and do something and adjust to the fact that it wasn't the coach that they necessarily signed up to play for. So I think there's something to be said for that part of it, whether there are, underlying skills that they had that he saw and brought in. And I don't know, that's hard to say, but I do think there's a bunch of guys who have pretty good attitudes about what they're doing and have worked hard under the new regime to play as well as they have. And character matters. And I think to that extent, even some of the guys that left, you look at what Al Durham's doing now at Providence and really being a leader within that program. They're playing really well. He made, I think, like 10 straight free throws at the end of the game, the other night to really close one out. I think the quality of the kids was good under Archie Miller. I think he just couldn't get him to play in a way that was successful in the Big Ten. So I guess if there's one area that I would do it, I think probably it's more from a character standpoint, maybe than from a basketball one.
We had several questions that we've kind of answered already. John Silver asked a question about how to stop Kofi. I think we addressed that. Luke Niehaus asked about the record going into. Is it fair to expect a 6-3 record? Yes, I do think so. Good question. Philip asked a good question. Let's ask two more questions, Andy. We'll call it a night. Philip Jones says, what do you think of Xavier's play in the past few games? Do you think he is starting to play the way Coach Woodson wants him to? And explain how great point guard play would help Indiana the rest of the way. Your thoughts on Xavier Johnson's growth as an Indiana Hoosier?
Well, I'm going to use something that you say all the time on here, that college basketball is a guards game. And just so you know, I'm listening to you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
And I agree with you. I just think what he has brought, and I think we've talked about this a lot on the show, really throughout the course of the year, is that point guard play is really going to define. And that was at certain points, whether that was, Xavier or Rob or Lander or whoever it was. I mean, we've kind of said that was going to really dictate how close to this team's ceiling that they could get. And I think what we've seen from Xavier Johnson is the ability to really rein himself in when he needs to. He's worked on fouling. He's worked on his emotions. And the focus has shifted to, this guy's just a really good basketball player who plays his butt off. And it's not the other stuff that is being talked about with him anymore. It's the things that he does well. I think he's been able to accentuate the things that he really does well, and minimize, not totally remove, but minimize some of the the areas in which he struggles. And that's become increasingly important with Rob out. I think his defense has been good. And so in terms of how important that is, his play and his ability to keep himself on the court is paramount with Finney out for an undetermined period of time at this point. And we saw some good things from Christian Lander. We saw some struggles from Christian Lander against Maryland. He is going to have to get more playing time in order for this team to kind of survive. It's not realistic, even though he probably would try to let X out there playing 40 minutes the way that he likes to play. And so you're going to have to be able to give him some rest. And I think point guard play in general is key. But I think just the maturity that X has shown within the season and the growth that he's shown within the season is promising. And if he keeps that up, keeps himself on the floor, he's making other guys around him better, which is really what you want from your point guard.
I agree totally, Andy. I think the one thing I would throw out there is, if he keeps playing this well, teams are going to have to put him at the top of the scouting report. And I think obviously the inside game has been the number one thing to stop, TJD and Race. You got to stop them. And then, you have shooters in Parker and Miller Kopp. So that has been number two probably. And you look at X maybe early in the season, questionable shot selection, his hits from three, and Rob being hesitant. I think most teams came in saying, we're going to make the point guards beat us. Well, all of a sudden, the point guards are playing really well. Rob beat Purdue with his excellent play. Xavier has been really playing well. So what the importance of point guard play is, one, it runs your offense, is always vital. But two, when you have high level of point guard play, it has to become an emphasis of the other team's scouting report defense. So they're not going to play drop coverage or go under like they have been in the past. They might have to start hedging to get the ball out of the point guard's hands, and then that opens up tags on the backside for your shooters or post players rolling. So this is really, really important going forward, that the point guard play, and Lander filling in for Rob does that for the minutes that he needs to as well. And then the last question, I think, is an extremely fun question, important question, and one that we want to honor too. Brian Flickinger says, what announcing style or preferences would you like to hear from IU's new public address announcer? I believe the new announcer should incorporate their own style, not try to imitate Chuck Crabb. For those of you, Chuck Crabb has announced his retirement. The longtime PA announcer and friendly voice that everyone has gotten used to has retired effective immediately. And so Saturday's game will be the first one with a new PA announcer, temporary, maybe permanent. We don't know yet. But we just, first of all, before we ask the question and end the show, thanks, Chuck, for all your service to Indiana University. Just a huge part of the atmosphere at Assembly Hall and Indiana basketball. You will be missed, and we wish you nothing but luck and best of luck in your retirement and health and all of those good things. But thank you. You are a big piece of Indiana basketball. And Brian goes on to say that he'd like to have some enunciation and excitement when IU scores. Would be fun to hear, but he doesn't want to hear someone screaming all the time and elongating words like 3 that you hear at some arenas. So, Andy, I haven't really given this a whole lot of thought other than how appreciative I was to be a part of Indiana basketball as a fan during the Chuck Crabb era. Your thoughts on the new PA announcer?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that I guess it says a lot about IU as a basketball program that the PA announcer is like a fixture in so many people's minds of different games that they had or players that he would introduce, and it was fun to see. See people talk about the guys that they like to hear him pronounce. The sophomore is one that always gets brought up. I think they were talking about. I think it was somebody said when he would announce Magnus Pelkowski from Bogota, Colombia was amazing. Yeah. And I remember when I was there, they had Luke Jimenez, but the way he said Jimenez was like different. He was like Luke Jimenez or something like that. I forget what it was. My roommate and I would always talk about it. So he definitely will be missed for sure, and is such a huge part of IU basketball memories for those of us not all that different in the way that like a Don Fisher or somebody like that. It's cool to be associated with the program that has some of those guys that are kind of woven through your memories of it, even though they weren't players, they weren't coaches, they weren't whatever. I think that that says a lot. So I know I heard somebody say our friend Jeremy Gray was covering things tonight, so I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job. Just a great guy. Those are big shoes to fill by any stretch. But yeah, I think being able to kind of keep, I don't need anybody to go try to imitate Chuck Crabb, but I think a little more, I don't want to say subdued, maybe is not the right word, but understated maybe is the right word. I kind of agree. It doesn't need to turn into some of the stuff that you hear where it's a little bit over the top for me. So I think at least in keeping with his style, in that regard, while not imitating him, just in terms of the way he reacted to different situations, I guess that would be my preference. But I don't have a firm idea of it. I know many people have thrown Galen's name out, so maybe we can get him to do it.
Well said. I do think the new PA announcer has to sign a contract that says he will pronounce sophomore. Just to remember, Chuck, that's the one thing that he does have to imitate from Chuck Crabb. But again, congratulations, Chuck.
We're done. No more questions.
Congratulations, Chuck. Ryan interrupted my last saying there. But
that's it. We're done. No more questions.
We know, Ryan, you want to get on a flight and get to Bloomington. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thanks to Bob Thompson for producing our music, and thanks to John Ringer of RiggsDesign.com for designing our logos. And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you on Saturday from Switchyard. Some of us will. Until then,
take it from me, Yogi Ferrell. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
All right. I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Wrap it up, Baldy.
Man, Mrs. Tonsoni's a little feisty tonight.
Tough crowd there at the Tonsoni house.
Tough crowd being snowed in for 2 days. I don't know what she wants me to do, but probably do some laundry or something, I imagine.
Perhaps.
All right, we need to get out of here. so the Doing the Work crew can take over. Stay tuned for that show. Talk about the incredible women's basketball team. Thanks again to Jeff and Kathy for all the work that they do. Thanks for you, the chat mob, for joining on this wintry weather Thursday. Thanks, Andy, for joining in. Good luck Saturday. Both of you and I will be coaching in the mornings. Or are you coaching or watching Saturday?
Coaching
Okay,
at noon, same time as the IU game.
I'm coaching at 11. Part of the reason why we won't be there Saturday, but have a beer, raise it up, toast us, and think about us. But have fun this weekend. Go Hoosiers, and we'll see you later.